At the town dump, a man in torn gloves quietly sorted scrap metal every morning. No one asked his name, until a tornado ripped through the outskirts and destroyed the emergency tower, yet somehow, the old fire sirens began to howl again. When the mayor asked how, someone said, the guy at the dump rewired the signal box. He used to command communication lines in Kandahar. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to like the video. Every morning in Brooks Hollow, before the sun rose over the hills, the same man arrived at the dump, wearing a faded green jacket, pushing a squeaky cart. Always quiet, always alone. The locals called him Scrapjack. No one knew where he lived. He never spoke at the diner. Just came in for black coffee, paid in crumpled bills, and nodded thanks. He kept to himself. Collected copper wires, broken transistors, old relays, defunct sirens. Kids joked he was building a robot. Adults muttered he was just one of those broken vets who never came home in the head. No one asked. No one listened. Except for Joey. Joey was 9, obsessed with tools, and had an ear for static. He'd sneak out after school and visit the dump fence. Watch Scrapjack dig, dismantle, rebuild. One day, Jack noticed him. "You like machines?" he asked without turning. Joey nodded. Jack handed him a twisted coil of wire. "Tell me what this does by next week." That's how it began. Then the sirens died. It happened on a Tuesday. A tornado cut through the county line. The official emergency broadcast failed, satellite dish torn clean off the firehouse roof. No power. No phone. No alerts. But 15 minutes after the system went dark, the town's oldest fire sirens started howling, one after another. Deep, echoing tones not heard in decades. Families ducked into basements. Kids ran to stormed shelters. Doors slammed. People braced. And because of that, no one died. Not one. When the storm passed, Sheriff Miles looked up at the fire station roof, still broken. The broadcast dish still hanging. "How'd the sirens go off?" he asked. Nobody answered. Until Joey said, "I think it was the man from the dump." The town thought he was kidding. Until they saw Jack the next morning, same cart, same jacket, except this time, he was limping. And in the cart? A mangled antenna. A portable relay system. A vintage manual siren key. He walked straight to the firehouse, set the cart down, and said, "It'll work better if you ground the feed this time." Then turned and walked away. If you've ever misjudged someone based on how they looked, only to learn they were the first to save you, type never again in the comments. After the sirens, things changed, but only a little. Scrapjack still showed up each morning, sorting old wires and rusted appliances. Still bought black coffee, still left before anyone could ask where he lived. But now, people looked longer. Some even nodded first. Sheriff Miles showed up at the dump one morning, holding a clipboard. "Mind if I ask what you connected the sirens to?" Jack didn't pause. Just pointed to a pile of scrap beside him. Old repeater. Wired to the original fire loop. Still buried under the town hall. "You knew it was there?" "I installed it." That made Miles stop. "You worked for the town?" Jack didn't answer. Just started stripping copper from a motor. Later that day, Miles dug into the archives. No one named Jack worked communications. No one listed as a contractor either. But in a file from 2003, he found a name. J. Beckett, Signal Warrant, U.S. Army, Com Systems, Kandahar Deployment, 2004. Miles blinked. The man from the dump wasn't Scrapjack. He was Chief Warrant Officer Jack Beckett, who had once rerouted an entire battalion signal relay during a combat blackout under mortar fire. At the diner, Nora the waitress noticed Beckett's limp worsening. "You okay?" she asked, handing him his coffee. "Old bones," he said. "You should take it easy." "I'm no good at easy." He took his cup and walked out. Joey kept coming to the dump. Brought his school radio kit one day and asked, "Can I show you something?" Jack nodded. Joey powered on the kit, tried to make a shortwave connection, and failed. "Static," he mumbled. Jack leaned over, twisted a wire, tightened the dial. A faint voice came through. "Cloud front moving east." Joey's eyes lit up. "How do you know that?" Jack shrugged. "Signal never lies. People do." Word of Jack's actions spread slowly. Curtis from the county office stopped by the dump. Said they'd like to name a system upgrade after him. Jack shook his head. "Name it after the kids who will fix it next." He didn't want credit. Just connection. That week, 3 veterans from neighboring towns showed up. One leaned on a cane, said, "Beckett, you old ghost. Still keeping the grid humming?" Jack smirked. "Just barely. Someone's gotta." They didn't salute. Didn't make speeches. just stood with him for a while, like it was a habit they'd all forgotten until now. Some heroes don't walk into town wearing medals. They crawl in quietly, rebuild what's broken, and leave without asking for thanks. If you've ever seen one, type "saw him" in the comments. Sheriff Miles didn't sleep much after reading Beckett's file. He found more. A letter of commendation. Operation Reconnect, Kandahar, 2004. Kept critical communication open under fire for 37 consecutive hours. Refused extraction. Ordered last chopper to carry the wounded. Signed by a Colonel Miles had only ever seen on Pentagon broadcasts. And yet the man who did all that now soldered junk radios behind the county landfill. The sheriff drove out the next morning. Beckett was tuning a wind-up generator. "You ever plan on telling anyone?" Miles asked. "Why?" Beckett replied, not looking up. "You rebuilt our emergency grid in the middle of a tornado. With a shopping cart." Beckett kept working. Miles watched the generator start to hum. "You know the fire chief thinks we should bring you on as a consultant?" "I already consult," Beckett said. "Really? With who?" Beckett finally looked at him. "Your kid, Joey." That stopped Miles cold. He's been coming by, asking the right questions. Later that day, Joey burst into the station. "Sheriff, I got a signal from 3 towns over on the kit Mr. Beckett helped me build." Miles smiled, shook his head. "You just turned your bedroom into a radio tower." "Yeah," Joey grinned. "Cool, huh?" That night, a group of kids from the high school AV club showed up at the dump, all carrying broken radios. They'd heard what Joey was doing. Beckett didn't turn them away, just nodded toward a table of spare parts. "Hope you brought patience." By the end of the week, 5 kids could track weather shifts better than the county's own alert system. And every one of them said the same thing. "He doesn't just fix. He teaches." One of the parents posted about it online. The caption read, "My son's new mentor doesn't wear a badge or have a degree, but he taught him how to listen when the static clears." That post exploded. Within hours, veterans from across the country replied, "Signal Chief Beckett? That man saved my squad. I thought he was gone. Tell him the wire still holds." If someone you know once passed you knowledge that still echoes in everything you do, drop a signal in the comments. Sometimes, the right frequency finds you at the right time. The dump had become a classroom. Old spools and satellite parts now served as lesson props. The kids started calling it the shack. Beckett never corrected them. But one night, Joey asked the question no one else dared. "Why'd you stop talking to the world?" Beckett paused, soldering iron in hand. He glanced at the boy. "Because the last signal I sent never came back." Joey didn't push. But that night, Sheriff Miles found Beckett sitting alone beside the hill that overlooked the junction box. "You all right?" Miles asked. Beckett didn't look up. "You know about Hill 7? Miles shook his head. "Kandahar. 2004. We were holding a forward station. Bad weather. No support. We had 37 minutes of radio silence. I was the last man with a working transmitter." He looked toward the trees, where the stars flickered behind clouds. "I sent our position, our wounded count, coordinates. Over and over." Miles sat beside him. "And they never came. Too late. Dust storm ate the signal." He took a breath. "But they heard it. 2 days later. Found the tapes. Used them to trace the bodies." Beckett pointed to his own chest. "I didn't save them. I just made sure someone could listen later." Miles was quiet a long while. Then he asked, "So why Fairview?" Beckett smiled faintly. "Because it's quiet. You can hear the world again." Word spread that Beckett was once signal chief for Blackbird Ops, a communications team embedded in the harshest parts of the world, sometimes with no backup, no map, no margin for error. He wasn't just a wire guy. He was the reason helicopters knew where to land. The reason medics found breathing soldiers. And yet, he lived behind the dump. One night, a black SUV pulled into town. A woman in uniform stepped out. Colonel Stripes. She found Beckett soldering a handheld scanner. "You disappeared," she said. He looked up. "No. I just changed frequency." She handed him a folder. "DARPA wants to rebuild rural signal response. We want you to lead it." Beckett shook his head. Too late for that. But not too late to teach. He didn't say yes. Didn't say no. He just handed her Joey's blueprint. "He'll build it faster than I did." The colonel looked down, impressed. Before she left, she asked, "Well, what would you name the protocol?" Beckett paused. "Echo 1. Because sometimes, all that matters is the reply. If you believe that the messages we send, lessons, love, warnings, don't disappear, they echo forward into others, type Echo 1 in the comments. Let's honor those who kept the signal alive when no one else could. The weather report warned of another storm. Nothing like the tornado, but strong enough to knock out power lines again. Fairview prepped quickly. This time, they knew the drill. Beckett didn't wait for the county alert. He activated his own system. Solar batteries charged. Radio scanned. Frequency relays quietly pinged across the valley. Sheriff Miles visited the shack. You expecting another blackout? Beckett didn't look up from his panel. Expecting nothing. Preparing for anything. Curtis from the firehouse brought spare diesel. Joey and 2 classmates were checking line-of-sight relays on the school roof. You taught them everything, Miles said. No, Beckett replied. I just reminded them how to listen. That evening, Miles noticed a new device on Beckett's workbench. Looks military. Used to be. What is it? Beckett smiled. A reply beacon. Signals survivors after an EMP pulse. Based on heartbeat proximity. You think we'll need it? Beckett didn't answer. He just flipped a switch. And the device began to blink, slow, steady. Across town, sirens didn't wail this time. But porch lights flickered. Emergency radios synced to the new pulse. Families gathered. Not in panic, but in readiness. They trusted the quiet man who had rewired the town's instincts. That night, a boy named Ethan knocked on Beckett's door. Mr. B, I had a question. Beckett raised an eyebrow. How do you know when the system's actually working? Beckett walked to the table, pointed at a tiny green diode blinking inside a plastic box. You don't need to hear it. You feel it. Rhythm means life. Ethan nodded slowly. Before he left, he whispered, My dad said you helped save his convoy in Iraq. Beckett paused, then quietly said, Your dad was Echo 3. Ethan smiled wide. He said he always hoped he'd meet Echo 1 someday. Beckett looked away, but didn't hide the smile. That moment, it changed something. The next morning, Beckett submitted a request to Sheriff Miles. A community comms lab. Part public safety station, part school tech center. Blueprints attached. Volunteers signed up before the sheriff even posted it. They called it the loop. Short for, keep the signal going. If someone once left a message in you, a lesson, a code, a warning, and now you're the one passing it forward, drop loop active in the comments. Because that's how the strongest signals survive. By Monday, construction began. Not official, just organized. Quiet. Efficient. Like everything Beckett ever touched. An old maintenance shed behind the school became the loop's core. Solar panels donated by a nearby base. Antennas repurposed from broadcast towers. Wiring pulled from junkyards and given new purpose. Beckett oversaw every connection. He never raised his voice. He just pointed. And somehow, people moved. Joey, now with his own call sign Junior 1, coordinated volunteers. He wore a headset everywhere. Checked signals twice an hour. Started teaching younger kids what he'd learned. Beckett watched, silently proud. Sheriff Miles stood back, arms crossed, grinning. Town's never been more alert. Curtis agreed. Feels like we found our frequency again. The mayor showed up with reporters. Cameras. Beckett politely stepped away. I don't do speeches, he said. The mayor nodded, understanding. Instead, she unveiled a plaque on the front of the building. The loop, initiated by J. Beckett, signal chief. Built not for glory, but for readiness. Beckett didn't react until he noticed the small print at the bottom. Echo 1 lives. That night, he sat alone inside the loop. Monitors glowed softly. Radios hummed. He flipped through the signal book he'd kept for 20 years, pages worn, corners curled. On one page, a list of names. Soldiers. Call signs. Most crossed out. All except one. Joey's. Beckett underlined it in pencil. Outside, someone approached. It was Nora. She held a box, brown, taped carefully. I found this at the post office, she said. Came from Arlington. Beckett opened it. Inside, an old metal badge, a unit patch, and a letter. The note read, You saved us twice. Once overseas. Once back home. Welcome back, Chief. He folded it slowly. Didn't say a word. Just stood. And placed the badge inside a frame on the loop's wall. If someone once pulled you from silence into purpose, gave you signal when you thought you had none, say thank you, Chief, in the comments. Some legacies hum quietly, long after their last broadcast. It happened on a Thursday. A substation fire outside county lines triggered a chain outage. Grid down. Comms frozen. No warning. But Fairview didn't panic. Because the loop activated. Joey ran the mic. This is Junior 1. Local grid failure confirmed. Backup engaged. No injuries reported. Repeat. Loop is hot. Read relays lit green across town. Within minutes, volunteers checked on elders, fueled generators, distributed thermal packs. Beckett didn't issue orders. He stood by the board, listening, letting them lead. The fire chief called in via relay, stunned. "You've got a better response time than the county." Joey replied, "We trained for this." Later, Nora found Beckett outside the loop, alone under the stars. "You did it," she said. "No," he replied. "They did." Then came the final message. A radio ping encrypted. Beckett's old military frequency. He turned the dial, pressed the receiver. "Echo 1, do you copy?" He paused, then said, loud and clear. A pause. Then, "The field says thank you. You were never lost. Just ahead." Beckett clicked off the receiver. Didn't smile, but something in his eyes softened. He returned to the bench by the repeater tower, sat in silence, watching stars blink behind clouds. The signal held. In the morning, Joey found a note. "Junior 1. Signal's yours now. Keep it clean. Keep it true." And beneath it, his own call sign, crossed out with a pencil line. "Echo 1. Retired. Some lights don't go out. They just change towers. If someone passed you the torch, trusted you to continue something vital, type signal received in the comments." By Saturday, Beckett was gone. No goodbye. No speech. Just gone. But inside the loop, everything worked. The lights. The signals. The structure. Joey found one final entry in the system log, timestamped at 4:12 a.m. System stable. Community aware. Loop closed. Frequency lives. On the wall, beside the framed badge, someone pinned a hand-drawn poster. It read, "Signal doesn't end. It echoes." No one touched it. No one needed to. That weekend, towns from 3 counties came to see Fairview's loop. They asked for blueprints, for advice, for stories. But mostly, they asked about the man who started it. Joey said, "He was quiet. Taught me everything I know." Curtis added, "He didn't save us with power. He saved us with readiness." Nora smiled. "He made sure we'd never need him again." And Sheriff Miles? He simply tapped the radio on his belt and said, still tuned in, "Just in case. If someone ever gave you a gift that lasted longer than their presence, whether it was knowledge, protection, or the ability to lead, say their name in the comments. Let's keep the signal going." If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let YouTube promote stories of kindness.